welcome back to my channel. Wasa Iati, how are you? Today I wanted to record my September wrap up, but I wanted to do it maybe a little bit differently because I will have posted my wrap up on Instagram, which will have like all my ratings for all the books, and I'll write reviews on there for all the books. So today I wanted to talk about my top 3 from the month that I want to highlight. If you like this format, let me know, or if you prefer the other way, also let me know. You're not going to hurt my feelings, I'm still figuring out what I want to do, so it's nice to have feedback. So the 3 that I want to highlight, I read 12 books this month. One of them was on audio. A few of them were on ebook. I was reading a lot of my NetGalley books, and then I have a few that were physical books. The ones that I'm talking about are all ones that I read physical copies of. So I'll be talking about The Forgotten Kingdom by Signe Pike, which was gifted to me by Atria Books. I'll also be talking about Kindred by Octavia Butler. This was the selection for the Octavia Butler slow read along. I'll link it in the description. And then I also read Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese. So first I'll talk about The Forgotten Kingdom. This is the second book in a historical fiction trilogy. The first one is called The Lost Queen. It's inspired by the real historical people that are believed to have inspired the story of Merlin and King Arthur. The first book, The Lost Queen, follows Langorith, who is his twin sister. She's the perspective of the story, and it's really about her, and that starts from their childhood and goes through to young adults and leaves on a cliffhanger in that story. And so really it's about her journey, who she becomes. You get a little bit of him, so it's kind of like what's the word? It's kind of like a backstory, like those hero backstories where you learn origin stories. It's kind of like his origin story, but it's more on the periphery. This one is from multiple perspectives. I believe if I remember right, it was Langorith, the sister, Lailoken, the one who inspired Merlin, and then also Langorith's daughter was the third perspective. And I thought it was really smart the way that she did that, because it really expanded the world and let us see more of it from different viewpoints and different places within this place and see what's going on. And it was also, I felt like, even more getting close to who Lailoken's going to become who we think of as Merlin, or what caused that to become part of his lasting memory of who he is or was. The other thing that I liked about this was that it is set AD 573, a really long time ago, but it has like the beginnings of the spread of Christianity and how insidious that was for a lot of different religions and cultures, because they just came in and wiped out whole histories and sacred sites. In the first book, there was like a site that was completely demolished, and in its place put a church, a holy place for the Christian people. And you just see like the tides shift in terms of who practices the old religion or old ways or old beliefs to who is practicing Christianity now. So I thought that was interesting, especially reading as an Indigenous person, because that is something that's also part of our history, for many Indigenous people's history. And one thing that I thought was interesting about that, I'll read a piece of the author's note for you, because it really resonated with me. This book, I guess, is getting categorized a lot as a fantasy book. People are being like, if you want a fantasy, read this book. I didn't think of it as a fantasy. I thought of it as a historical fiction, but the aspects of it that make people think of it as a fantasy is the religion, the religious beliefs. But she points out in her author note that they're no different than Christianity in what they believe. And if this was a book talking about Christian beliefs, it would have never been categorized, or probably never been categorized as fantasy. But let me find it and read it for you. Given that I write about a time that's so archaeologically elusive, with so slight a body of plausible texts, I can't argue that some will refer to my novels as fantasy. But I would ask readers to consider this. If a character in a historical novel who is Christian believes in the power of prayer and then imagines they see a result, the work is deemed historical fiction. If a pre-Christian character does the same, the work is deemed historical fantasy. So I just thought that was interesting to think about, especially when thinking about any religion, in relation to how we have been made to think about Christianity. So that's just something to consider. So anyway, I really like this. Even though it is so far in the past, and so there's so little information for the author to have found about the time period and had to, work with what she had and fill this world and imagine how the things might have gone, or imagine how these characters would have responded, or people. They're not characters, they're people that she has made these characters into, created characters from. I think she did a really good job of that. And I could tell that she had put so much work into it. I think she worked on it for years, just traveling and looking things up and talking to historians and all that kind of stuff. And I admire that so much. And so this was a 5-star read for me, total highlight of the month. And I would recommend, even if you're not into historical fiction, if you are a fantasy reader, actually, I think this has the epicness of things like Game of Thrones or whatever other fantasy that is like epic. So I would recommend for that. I think it would be a good gateway. I'm not a historical fiction expert, but I think it was a good gateway for me into historical fiction and reading more historical fiction. I'm feeling inspired. I actually do want to read more of this author's work in particular. This one also ended on a cliffhanger, so it's killing me that I have to wait for the third book, whenever that's going to come out. But anyway, highly recommend. Next book I want to talk about is Kindred by Octavia Butler, which, as I said, was read for the slow read along that for Octavia Butler's work. This was the first book for the read along, and I haven't written a review yet, so my thoughts are not very articulate about it. But this follows this character whose name is Dana. Dana is a modern day character. This was written, I think, in the 70s, or at least it's set in that around that time. And she just one day flashes into the past, which is like in the south during like an era where there were like plantations and enslaved people. And she is linked to an ancestor of hers. And every time she goes back, it's because he is in a situation where he needs to be saved or he will die. And so she keeps rescuing him because if he isn't saved, she probably won't exist in the future. So she keeps saving him. The conflict is that he is the son of one of the slave owners, and white, and so there's this conflict of he does bad things, he grows into he's going to inherit this plantation and own these slaves, and he doesn't do good things, but what can she do? And so that is a conflict. It moves so fast. I didn't expect it to be such a quick read for me. Like, I just flew through it because it was just so grabbing. I loved her. I loved her relationships with the people she meets, the other characters, and just the conflicts it presents. You never really, you never really know why this is happening to her, but it's really, really, really good. But I'm still thinking I'm still thinking about it. I haven't watched the discussion video yet. I'm pretty sure that they saved it for people to watch later. I had like planned on watching it live, but I just spaced it, which I do all the damn time. But anyway, highly recommend. I actually recommend Octavia Butler's work in general because her writing is just so fantastic. Do not sleep on her work. She's amazing. The last one that I'm going to talk about is Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese, and this one is heavy. This follows Saul Indian Horse as he recounts his life from his early childhood up through adulthood, and he is recounting his life after recovering or going into recovery from alcoholism, and facing his trauma in that way and remembering his past. This book goes from him being taken into the residential school system, and you see some of his trauma with that, and then it goes through him discovering a love of hockey as a means of escaping his situation. He is an amazing hockey player. He's considered for professional, like he could go professional, and he deals with alcoholism, and it just, I don't even know how to talk about it. I was just like absolutely speechless after I finished it. I couldn't even articulate a thought about how I felt about it. And also it's only 200 pages, so I worry about spoiling it for other people. But I said it in my Instagram review, but I'll say it again, that Saul is a fictional character, but his story is very real for a lot of people who went through the residential school system, the boarding school system, and have this trauma that they carry. And yeah, it broke my heart, and then like it was just like a wave, like it would break my heart, and I would mend my heart when something great would happen, and break it and mend it and break it. It just was like yeah. One thing I will say on a lighter note is if you are somebody who likes reading about hockey, about people playing hockey or loving hockey or anything associated with that, this would be a good book for that, because there is a large chunk of it that is about the game. There is a discussion of the racism that Saul experiences when trying to play the game, when trying to compete, which also broke my heart because he loved it so much. He loved that game so much. He just wanted to play, but it just was this whole thing where people just couldn't. It was like a white man's game, so they were just like hated him for it and were racist, and even when they thought they were being supportive, they were being racist. It was just a lot. It was a lot, and there are trigger warnings for it, and I will put them in the description below. I think I'll put any trigger warnings I know for these other ones in the description below as well. But I highly recommend this, especially if you're looking for a jumping off point to learning more about perspectives about the residential school experience. This would be a great one. Anyway, that's all I have. Tell me your highlights from this month. What were your favorite books? Why did you love them? Have you read any of the ones that from my top 3 that I recommended? That's them. Or are you planning on reading them? Tell me. Anyway, that's all I have for you. I'll see you later. Bye.